Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Mike's Chess Videos, live streaming on Twitch, or you may be watching this later on YouTube. Today I am playing a slightly longer game because I've realized I only really play half-decent chess when I have time to think. I'm not yet, experienced enough. I don't yet have a quick enough intuition or eye or experience with all that matters in chess to be able to play well at a quick time control yet. And I think I've sort of realized that for me, I need the time. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to play a longer game today, 45 minutes each with a 45 seconds extra per move. I'm playing against a 1633 rated player. I started with e4. They've played c5, the Sicilian. I developed my knight. They did the same. I've played d4, opening up into an open Sicilian. There's been an exchange, and now g6 has been played, which takes us into the accelerated dragon. Black has played the accelerated dragon style setup, and it is now my move. I have plenty of time on the clock, still need to use it wisely, and let's see what we do here. Okay, so straight off the bat, I don't really know the main ideas of the accelerated dragon for white or black, and certainly there is a big extent in my chess where I need to work on my openings in order to get better, but I don't think that's necessarily the major thing that I need to work on. So we know he's going to play bishop g7. He's going to be attacking the knight again in that case. And basically I have a few options here. I could maybe preemptively defend the knight again. I could play c3, since, I could try and block out his bishop a little bit. Maybe I could trade knights, but I feel like that should only really help him by getting him a pawn onto the 6th rank rather than the 7th, and also opening the diagonal for his bishop. I could play something like f3. That doesn't necessarily improve my position in terms of maybe I should be instead prioritizing my development. If I was going to develop, I could put my bishop somewhere and just look to castle. I could also just develop this knight. I think that's very normal, perhaps in this kind of position. And then after bishop g7, I can then play bishop e3. And I think that looks pretty good. If he wants to develop the knight next, this is already defended. I can also, in that case, I think, defend the pawn again. And so that's probably what I'm going to do. I think that looks very reasonable. Okay, and having this little bit of extra time, hopefully I'm going to be able to play some half-decent chess. Now I do need to defend this knight, unless I want to move it away, but I think it's on a perfectly reasonable square. So I think I might as well just defend it. Since it's attacked twice, I defend it twice. And my pieces are developing pretty nicely so far, I think. And I have control of the center in a way, which he's attacking from a distance, but his central pawns still hang right back at their home base. He does develop the knight. This pawn is already defended, but doesn't hurt necessarily to over-defend. I probably want to get this bishop out anyway, so that I can also castle, which is likely what he's going to do on the next move. And so, yeah, bishop d3 certainly is one of the possibilities that I can consider here. Again, I could consider a move like this, but it may seem to me a little bit premature on the basis that I still haven't finished my development, my just basic development. I could also consider putting the bishop here or here. So basically this bishop has a choice of these three squares as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure there's much else to consider here. I don't think there's any sense in giving up the pawn, or for that matter taking the knight and then attacking this knight. I think my pawn here would just end up overextended. That said, this knight would have to move. Probably it could move here. Although if it moved there, I would also have this move, and that knight would be essentially trapped, which is interesting. Interesting to note. The knight would basically have to go back. And my pawn is a little bit overextended there. But potentially I could put my bishop here to defend it. Or I could even consider just sacrificing it in some cases. You know, put my bishop here on the following move. He could then get a tempo against me, but I can take on passant if that were to happen. It's actually kind of an interesting idea. So since we got some time, let's think. Take, take, push. Now you might think, what happens if take and he takes this way? Well, if he takes that way, I take his queen. I can castle long with check, and when he moves away, then this move is still the move I'm considering. So that's why I'm considering taking this way, because this seems like a lot stronger. And you only really need to consider the strong one. Hi, I told you I'd be back. Nice to have you here, Fomented Skull. Really nice to have you here. We've just started the game. Not sure if you caught the whole thing. I'll scroll quickly through it for you so you can catch up. I'm playing a longer game today because I always have time troubles, and more importantly, with extra time means extra thought and hopefully extra, effort and expenditure of self, investment of self in the process of hopefully learning and then improving from chess. And ultimately, you learn to go slowly, you learn to do it well, and later on down the line, you learn to do it quickly. But I need to learn to do it firstly slowly. So I started with e4. They played a Sicilian. I opted for an open Sicilian. They've taken this dragon approach. I developed my knight. They put their bishop there on g7. I've put my bishop on e3. And now that they've developed their knight to f6, this is now the move that I am considering. And yes, definitely my turn. So I've got to be a little bit quicker. I'm considering taking this knight, and when he takes back, pushing this pawn forward, because this knight really wouldn't have anywhere to go there except for this square. And if it went to this square, then g4, as far as I am aware, would win the knight. But what could be played is he takes the pawn, I take a knight, he takes this knight, ruining my pawn structure, and then takes back. He gets 2 pawns for the knight and ruins my pawn structure. That's at best. And at worst, I end up with an overextended pawn. So I think I'm probably just going to opt to instead develop my bishop. Where do I want to put the bishop is the only question. If I put it here, he could play a move like this to attack my bishop. Let's say I castle and he takes my bishop and I take. I should be fine there. You should say I should be fine, but I don't think I really want to be giving up my bishop in what's an open position, an open position. So I might prefer to play something else here. Maybe even a3 to prepare this move in a case where he can't play this. But even then, he would have this move to attack my bishop if he wants. So d3 is a nice square for my bishop, but his knight will have access to attack that bishop from a couple of different angles. Same here. He has a couple of different angles to get to me. So if I want to keep my bishop, maybe I keep it a little bit more passive for the moment. And just after castles, I castle. It's his move. What's he likely to do? Well, it's kind of up to him to figure that out. I would imagine he would probably move one of these pawns. I don't think I'm necessarily afraid of any of these moves, but I do wonder if I should try and get this move in while I can. So I'm going to look at it one more time, and if not, then I'll play bishop e2. If this is played and he jumps back, I can also follow up with f4 if I want. Nah, I'm gonna play bishop e2. Somehow it just didn't quite seem right. I don't know why, but this pawn just seemed to me like it was going to be a bit overextended. It seemed a bit too early in the game for me to push hard for an attack. By the way, it's raining here and I've got a tin roof, so you might hear that in the background. Sorry if you do. No problem. No problem at all. I don't know if I asked you this last time, but what's your chess rating, Fomented Skull? And are you down for these longer games where we go into depth and really try and deepen our understanding ultimately, as I think that's how we're going to improve in chess. Now he's thinking, I think he's probably going to castle. Yep, he castles, and I think I'm going to castle here too. I I mean, it's not forced. I could also play queen d2. I'm trying to remember whether in the dragon style setup, if white should try and castle long. I'm not too sure, but I think this is actually quite a nice flexible move to play. It also sets up possibilities of playing bishop h6 and trying to trade off this bishop of his. Not in the 4 digits. That's fine. I remember being not in the 4-digit realm, and it wasn't very long ago. Now, so I could castle, but that sort of puts all my cards on the table, but I don't really see a downside with queen d2 first, so I'm actually going to play that. I'm going to play queen d2. It's not like he can attack this queen. He could, I suppose, with this move, but that simply gives up a knight for a pawn. So I think my queen is safe here. It combines nicely with my bishop, and I think the reason this is a typical idea, I do have in the back of my mind the idea of castling long. I think that's possible. Also, it's flexible. It means I can castle long, or I might castle short, which means he's really got to consider both possibilities. I haven't put my cards on the table yet, so hopefully it makes it a bit more complicated for him to figure out what to do next, because he's not sure, am I going to go this way, or am I going to go this way? The other thing is, in the dragon variations of the Sicilian, which is characterized, I think, by black's bishop being here on g7, this bishop is kind of the hallmark piece of the black position, just because, you know, if the knights jump out of the way, or, you know, there's trades that happen, this bishop increases in strength a lot. And so a typical idea, and it's not just in the dragon, but in a lot of cases where one side has a fianchettoed bishop here, a typical idea is to create this kind of bishop and queen battery, and to play something like this whilst the rook is still on f8, because doing so essentially it forces a trade of the bishops, either because the bishop will trade itself straight away, or because the bishop wants to maintain itself and moves away, in which case you win a rook, or, you know, he does something else, like tries to move the rook away, but then you trade the bishop. So in either case, it turns out well for white, and, you know, basically black has to lose the bishop. So if he wants to hold on to the bishop here, he would have to immediately take action for that to occur. For instance, moving the rook, because then if I come here, then he can move the bishop back, and although my bishop cuts across his king, I don't trade the bishop, and I also don't win a rook. But again, playing this move, it develops my queen, it gives me this option, it gives me flexibility here, and it doesn't create any weaknesses. So I think it's a nice move, and it puts him back on the clock. So now I'm going to try and think about what he should do in this position, and how I should respond to whatever I think is best for him. Firstly, I don't think he should trade anything. I don't think he should take my knight, for example, because that just helps me to develop my bishop. Okay, so no need to think, he's already played. He's played the move d6, which makes sense in the sense that he's trying to develop his bishop somewhere. Now, when you think about where he wants to put the bishop, there's not a lot of actual possibilities. I mean, certainly not here. He could think about this move, at least for the time being. I could, if I wanted to, take that square away from him, and then he wouldn't have this square, this square, this square. He would have this square, but he wouldn't probably want to use it, because I would take the bishop, sort of ruin his pawn structure, although, you know, he gets another pawn in the center and opens his rook, so he might want to do that, except for the fact that it means I win a bishop. So really, it's likely he's going to play to this square here, particularly if I start with h3, which I might. Another possibility for me here, as I mentioned earlier, was I could try and start like this, and, you know, if he plays this move, I don't necessarily need to be afraid of that. Now I'm thinking about it a bit deeper. You know, I don't think I need to prevent this with h3, because if he does play this, well, I can then just play f3, and he's kicked away anyway. Probably going to have to come back here regardless. So I'm not going to waste a tempo playing this, unless what I'm actually trying to stop is his knight coming here. Because if his knight comes there, and then I play this, then he takes my bishop. See what I mean? So I could play this for the purpose of preventing his knight from jumping in. That would make sense, potentially. Alternatively, I can play this and try and get his bishop out of the way, as I was talking about. And if he plays this move, well, we trade bishop. Let's say he takes. And now I can, again, kick the knight away. So I actually quite like that. I quite like that. We do have a bit more time to think, so is there anything else I want to do? I mean, I could commit to castling one way or the other already. So let's just see, is there anything else he can do if I play this move? Is anything else scary? I mean, if he trades, I take with the queen. I'm not afraid of that. The thing is, if I castle or do something, else, he can move this rook, and then he's going to have this bishop for the rest of the game. Whereas this is my chance. I have a chance to get rid of the dragon bishop. Maybe I should do that. Do have to be aware, though, if I do this now, and I'm seeing this at the moment, he takes, and I'm glad I'm seeing this, he takes, which is an attack on my queen, and if I take back, he takes my knight, and my knight hangs. So that wouldn't be the case if I had a rook here, because then my rook could recapture the knight. So that does, make me think maybe I should castle first, or maybe I should take this knight, and then when he takes back, then play this. But then his pawn structure looks kind of good. So maybe I should castle long now. Maybe I should consider castling long. Or I could again consider maybe h3 and just wait and see what he does on the next move, which likely would be something like this. Likely it would be just developing the bishop. And is there anything else? Like after this, let's say he takes. Let's say I take here to attack his queen. The problem is he takes my queen with check, and after I take back, he moves his queen out the way, or takes the knight more precisely. So probably castling long makes sense. Then let's say he moves the rook. I can start launching my pawns up the board and try and open up. Because if we do castle opposite sides, then we're going to enter this plan. So there's a very, very typical plan. Do you know about it, Fermented Skull? If you're still there, what is typically the plan when there's opposite sides castling? So let's say white has castled on this side of the board, black's castled on this side of the board. What does white want to do with their pawns? Do you know? And this is a generic plan, but it works in a lot of circumstances with opposite sides castling. Yep, you want to strengthen the pawn structure. In particularly, how is that done? Don't know. All good. All good. I mean, look, maybe a move like f3 can strengthen this particular pawn structure, but what I was trying to get at, and maybe something you can take into your games, is when there is opposite sides castling, the typical plan is to do a pawn storm towards their king. So for white, that would mean essentially throwing your pawns up this way and trying to open up the position towards their king. And for black, it would likewise mean the same, throwing the pawns up the board and trying to open things up towards the king. And in that sense, it becomes a bit of a race as to who can open up whose king first. So if I castle long now, that would then be my next most likely plan. Pushing these pawns. Maybe I would do something like this first. And maybe I should start with this first, just to take this square away from the knight. And then I can castle long, and then I can follow up with moves like this, and do that whole pawn storm idea in an opposite sides castling position. So I think that probably would make some good amount of sense. I think that would make a pretty good amount of sense. I could castle first, but then I do have to deal with this idea. I could then take, and when he takes back, then play f3, hitting the bishop. Bishop moves back. And then I continue my pawn storm. And that's probably pretty good. The only downside there is I am giving up a bishop. So do I want to start with f3 instead, or perhaps h3? Probably f3, because if I'm going to move the h-pawn, I'd probably rather move it 2 squares, so it more quickly gets up the board there. I could also start with h4 straight away. Good start with h4 straight away. Then if he comes here, to be honest, I could continue pushing this pawn. If he takes this bishop, I can take back, but then this knight falls again. That's something to really be aware of, how potentially under attack this knight is. After a move like this, take, he could even take here. So I think I do need to defend this knight again, or just prevent this knight from moving. But the knight can also move here. So look, long story short, I'm going to castle long. I think that's the ultimate plan in this. I don't know, actually. I don't know. I think I'm going to restrict his knight. I'm going to restrict this knight and strengthen my pawn structure, as you say. Weakens my bishop a little bit, but I'm preparing to castle. I'm preventing his knight from coming here so that in future I might still have this as a possibility, which won't be the case if he came here earlier. And we'll see what he does, basically. If he puts his bishop here, which is what I'm more or less anticipating, then I would most likely either castle long or put a rook here for the purposes of adding extra defense to the knight, so that then I'll be ready to try and trade this bishop and do a pawn storm, and hopefully those things would work out in my favor. Okay, so he does put the bishop there. Probably I'll castle long. Do I have to be afraid of anything like this with my king here? Probably not. I can just kick him away again. So probably castling long here is good. And we're going to get... So I had a bit of a think on the last move, but I think now the position is a bit more understandable. Like, I took some time to understand some of the ins and outs of the position, and hopefully have done so well. So now I think I'm in a position where this move is playable, depending on what he does next. Like, if he doesn't move the rook, if he does not move this rook, then I probably will play this move to try and eliminate this bishop, which is, again, the source of a lot of his play, both attacking and defensively. So he's now starting this pawn storm towards me and my king. So I need to be pretty quick. Like I said, it's a bit of a race. Not quick on the time, quick on the board. Got to be quick on the board in this kind of position. So this is now quite a real possibility. Again, now if he takes, I can take with my queen. And if he ever takes my knight, my rook is here to defend. Okay, so that's useful to know. But I don't need to play this by any stretch. I could also just join in on the race and start with h4. Or for that matter, g4. If I start with h4, it does give him the option to play h5, and that sort of shuts things down a lot. So for that reason, I'm kind of looking at g4 instead, because that way h4 is not as attractive. I can take, and things do open up to an extent there. So probably I would start with this g4 move instead. I think g4 looks pretty good. The only other question is, am I going to start with this otherwise? Again, I do apologize. You know, it's might not be as entertaining as a quicker game, but what I really, really do want to do is improve understanding of chess and actually get better. We'll get quicker later, but let's get better to start with. So let's try and actually understand what is better here. Is it g4? Is that more mission critical at this point in time? Or is it trying to trade off his bishop while we have a chance? Because this does ensure the trade. If he takes this immediately, then I can take this. If he takes this with check, well, I can take in a number of ways. Let's say I take with my queen. Then he takes this. And then I can play g4. And I think that position's absolutely good for me. So I'm not afraid of this. Am I afraid of him? If I'm going to be afraid of something, it's probably him continuing to push his pawns, to be honest. If I take the bishop, he's going to have to take back. Then I can play g4. And am I afraid of him then pushing forward with b4? Probably not. I don't think so. Especially since his bishop's no longer here to contribute to the attack. If he attacks my knight like that, I mean, I just don't think I should be so scared of that. So I think this is probably what I'm going to play. It also, by the way, prevents him from playing h5. So a couple ways there to prevent him from it. You understand cooking? Nice. Man, I'm learning, starting to understand that olive oil and butter burn when you're trying to cook a nice steak and you put it on high heat because red meat loves heat. But man, that rancid butter and oil, once it burns, doesn't have a nice smell. So I've been using coconut oil, which has a slightly strange scent to it, but seems to handle the heat a bit better. Anyway, so yeah, so I think I can probably get away with this. And again, even if I play g4, he's likely to play this move anyway, so it's probably going to transpose into one another, which means I'm going to take the chance now to get rid of the bishop while I have a chance. This bishop now either gets off the board in one way or another, or it allows me to win an exchange. That is now a guarantee. And after he plays this, well, then I can play g4, h5, etc. And we can try and open up the position, maybe, and eventually put rooks there. That's how the general scheme of this goes. So hopefully this will be illustrative and insightful to some extent. Opposite sides castling, pawn storm toward the king. You do that at whatever rating you're at the moment. Next time you notice that you've castled opposite sides, just remember, in general, don't throw caution to the wind necessarily, but your general plan that you can adhere to is start throwing pawns toward their king. With the general idea that when the pawns are out of the way, okay, so he's played this move, and we calculated this. We're going to take his bishop first, attacking the rook. We've eliminated the strong dragon bishop as planned. And if he takes this with check, we can take either with the queen or with the knight. Interestingly, with the knight, because, we're pretty much sure he wants to play this and this. If we take with the knight, does that actually reduce his attacking potential? Maybe. But somehow I think I prefer taking with the queen. But again, I think this is a chance where we're going to have a quick think, because we've got 23 minutes with extra 45 seconds every move. This is why I chose a long game. It's to be able to distinguish these things. I like having these two pieces on this file. Like I say, if I play like this, he's going to take back. And then after something like g4, preventing h5, or at least strongly discouraging it, he's probably going to continue on with this plan. And ultimately, he's going to want to play this. If I take like this, then he takes, then I play like this, that's certainly nice as well. And if he continues on with this plan at that point, he's kind of got a long way to go before he ever makes contact with my pawns. And when he does, I can just kind of take. Ultimately, then I can put my knight back here. So, like, it's kind of hard to say. But if I do like this, what's the downside? Like, can he push this then? And whereas if I do this and he pushes this, well, I can take with my knight. Somehow, I don't know here. I really don't know what's best. It's definitely one of these moves. They might be relatively similar. Let's say take, he takes, and I jump back. How does that differ from takes, he takes, and I jump back? Well, it doesn't differ at all. So if I wanted to just reset this position up with this off the board and with this here, we can do that. But I'm probably better off, after I capture the piece and he takes, I'm probably better off, I think, playing g4. And then continuing on the pawn stomp. So the question is my queen better here or here in the ensuing play? I don't know. I really don't know. If he does try and push through the center of the board, in general you want to try and keep it closed, because we're not trying to attack through the center, we're trying to attack on the king side. I'm kind of leaning towards taking with the knight, to be honest. Instinct says take with the queen. Instinct says take with the queen, and later on down the line, my queen and rook can combine here, potentially. But I wonder if my queen and rook would better combine up here, and if that would happen. And also, again, taking here so that he doesn't ever get to b4 with a tempo against my knight. The other thing you might do if I take with the knight, he takes g4, you might put a queen here or a rook here, just taking aim at this pawn. But I don't know how, I don't think that's necessarily such a bad thing. And maybe I want my knight over here. You know, I'm going to take with the knight. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I'm going to give it a go. Because maybe I want my knight ultimately to help out in the attack of the king. And like I said, if I need to, I can bring it back. So I don't know if that was really right or wrong. I really don't know. Maybe it didn't matter too much. By the way, is the sound okay? Because it's really loud in here with the rain on the roof. Okay, so he takes. And I think it's just going to be g4 here. g4, because I want to defend against him playing h5, which he can play still, but like I say, I take, and that opens up the g-file towards the target. Other moves that I can consider. The other thing that's nice about the knight not being here is my queen looks at this square, which just prevents his queen from coming in. Not that the queen was going to do a lot there, but it's nice to have these opportunities. You know, if this knight ever moves, as it may do if we prod it, then we might have moves like check or check, and they might be useful in certain circumstances. But I do like the way this game's gone so far. I think I'm playing pretty well. It's fine, thank you. And he's played h5, so my idea here was certainly to take on h5, opening the g-file. Either he takes with the knight, and in that case, the g-file is now a semi-open file, or he takes with the pawn. I think taking with the pawn would be worse, because now the g-file is completely open. I can move a rook there immediately with check, and it would be extremely dangerous for him. So he's going to have to take with the knight. If I play this, where does the knight go? That's definitely worth asking. I mean, it can go back, and I think that's against the spirit of what I'm trying to do. By the way, any of these checks I was talking about, he can always just play a pawn down, which isn't so nice. So do you know what? I think the answer here, unless I'm going to play like maybe h4, because like this trade is happening now at some point. I don't have to play it right now. The only way he can avoid this trade at this point is by pushing the pawn further. So if I play h4, the pawn is fixed. It can't move any further. And just like before, how the trade of the bishops was guaranteed, if I play h4, the trade of these pawns is also guaranteed. The thing is, if he does it on his terms, if he takes the pawn, and I have to take back with a pawn, then it all remains shut. So I need to take. Logically speaking, I need to take to open up this file. If I don't take there, he's going to find a way to close that side of the board. And at this point in time, it looks as though my pawn storm is opening lines towards his king far quicker than his is toward my king. And as a result, I think I'm feeling, I was going to say quietly confident, but, you know, here I am yapping away into a microphone, broadcasting to the internet. So maybe not so quiet, but confident in this position. Now, the question is, how do we proceed after I think he's going to take with the knight. We've basically established that these two checks are essentially useless. They're essentially useless because they're met by this pawn just taking 2 steps down. It does hit the queen, although, now that I think about that again, if he does play this, hitting the queen, well, in that case we can just simply snatch this pawn. And now we've won a pawn. Not only have we won a pawn, but we have a lot of pressure on this bishop coming from both of our queen and rook. If the bishop ever moves, we can then trade more pieces, or we can take this with check. So in actual fact, this check might be nice, because this doesn't seem like such a good move after all. So in response to this check, he can block with this other pawn if he wants, however, and that's probably pretty good. Another move we can consider here is using this knight, the knight we've put here. We could use it in the attack and try. The threat would be to take the knight, and after we take the knight, he would have to take back with the pawn, further opening up his kingside, and then really allowing, the rooks to come in and the attack to just continue on. I've got to believe that would be really good for me. So therefore, he can't allow this trade. If he brings the king here to defend the knight, so as to, after take, he takes with the king, thereby, it's not even worth considering. That's really bad for him. The other reason it's really bad for him is because I could jump my knight up here, and there'd be a discovered check. And once he deals with the discovered check, I would win the queen. So after this move, if he wants to defend the knight, he could do it with the rook. But if he does that, that's probably fine. I could even just install my knight on this nice square. If he ever plays something like this, kind of getting into the weeds there. I'm not seeing that this is the way forward necessarily. What might be a good way forward here potentially is putting a rook on the G file. Maybe even putting my queen here. Doesn't necessarily threaten anything. Again, the check it's got potential. He could bring the knight back in that case. And then my queen, what's it doing? I could play this. If he takes, I take, but yeah. Again, seems to lose the thread a little bit. Seems to lose the thread of the game. Another possibility is I could put my knight here. If he takes, I take back. And although I close the G file, I open the H file where my rook is. But he could put his rook there immediately. And after take, he takes with the queen. He seems to be defending everything. So, might have to think about something else. Could also consider f4 here. f4 might be a nice move. f4 seeking to play f5. That might be a way to go. f4 does give control of this square up. That square is currently controlled by my pawn. Always got to think when you move a pawn, you got to think, what do you lose control of in so doing? So if I move the pawn forward, it does give him an opportunity to improve his bishop. But I guess if he puts his bishop there, I can put a rook there to attack the bishop. And after take, if he takes my knight, I take, he takes this. Yeah, don't necessarily love that. So maybe I could play h3 again, just to support this square, and then prepare f4. So h3, what would he do then? That's the other thing is, it's not necessarily super easy for him to come up with a nice plan. If he wants to play this sort of a move, let's say f4, I still have control of this square in that case. Let's say he continues pushing. It seems like I do have time to pull off something like this, doesn't it? And then, threatening to take, but he can always take back like this. So ultimately, probably what I want to do is double on this file. So maybe instead of trying to control this square with a pawn, maybe I should control it with a rook. Putting a rook on a semi-open file seems like a good idea. The only question now is which rook. Which rook do I want to use? Because this rook's doing possibly a nice job. It's already in the vicinity of the king. I think this is where my attack is, so I think I'm probably going to use this rook. The only thing is this rook's also somewhat useful in certain circumstances, like we were seeing before. So that is another semi-difficult decision to make. But, maybe this is the rook to use, because this rook again is useful. At the moment, this rook's not so useful. It's hard to say. So let's say I come here. He does his move. So basically the plan is, associated with this, is to play f4 and then f5. If he ever plays f5 himself first, after I've put a rook here, that shouldn't necessarily be very good for him. Because then I can take. This pawn is pinned, so you'd have to take back, let's say, with a bishop, most likely. And then I would have moves like this, threatening the knight and the bishop. If he takes, I can take, and I'm threatening then to double my rooks, and then play moves like this. So I think the plan is okay, but I'd really like to know with a bit more certainty. Can I just play this move as well? I mean, I know I've been playing on the king side, and I think that's correct, but what if I play this move? If he takes, he loses his bishop. And that's clearly good for me, right? If he doesn't take, what does he do? Does he push forward and just give me the pawn absolutely for free, like just purely a free pawn with a tempo on this, and also pressure on the bishop? What else does he do? It takes this square away from his knight. That's good. His knight doesn't actually have any other squares after this. The knight's just sitting there, completely useless. Can't do anything. So this is maybe a nice move as well. And let's say he just moves the queen or something. Well, then I can take, and it still just wins a pawn. So is that not just a really nice move right there? That might just be, you got to have flexibility of thought. And yes, been attacking here, and I'm pretty sure, putting a rook here is a nice move. F4 might well be a nice move too, but this is just very direct. So what would be his response to this move? Just simply threatening to take. Let's say he puts a rook here. So then after I take and he takes, I can't take the pawn because he takes my rook. So, my knight. So let's say this and this, but nevertheless I take, and then after he takes, now I just move my knight here. And once we get a trade, let's say he puts his rook here. But then in that case, I've got this check because now the H-file's open. So I'm actually really looking at this move strongly as maybe the way to go. Not sure if I'm seeing anything wrong with that move, except that it's not really in keeping with the whole plan I've had all game. But again, that comes back to the flexibility question. So yeah, this is interesting. Can't take, because I simply take. What's the best way here? If I do this, or this, I kind of feel like I'm giving things away there. So I'm going to have one more look at this, and I'm going to play it because it just looks good. What if he just moves the bishop? Yeah, maybe he moves the bishop. Because at the moment these pawns do a good job of sort of dampening this long diagonal. Like if he put his bishop here, the pawns are kind of nice. But the moment I play this, let's say he comes here. Now I take, he can take this with a tempo on the rook. However, no he can't, because there's other tactics. Can you see any more tactics there? I can. So if I play this, and he comes here, I take pawn. If he takes this pawn, then I've got check. And after he deals with the check, I pick up this bishop. And that should be excellent for me. So after this and this, take, maybe he would take with the queen. But again, if he takes with the queen, he's got to be extremely careful. Extremely careful, because there's check, which attacks the queen. The queen, to save itself, would have to come here. But maybe, after I take and he takes back, maybe he's actually defending everything there. So maybe this is not actually quite as strong as I thought. I could take the queen, and when he takes back, I could then I'm just going to have this weak pawn. So actually, maybe I'm not going to play this for that reason. That's kind of good to know. Similarly, f4, does he have a similar idea? Attacking this pawn. There, I don't think so. Because again, if he ever takes this pawn, then I can play check and take the bishop. So I think maybe f4 is better. I can't decide which rook goes onto the g-file, but I'm pretty sure after a rook goes onto the g-file, whichever one it is, I think the follow-up plan is to play g4. So maybe I play g4 straight away, but then again this comes. Then if this, let's say he takes, I take. So that might be the way to go. This, this, and this. He takes, I take. He closes things down again, he would lose the rook. I think I'm going to play f4. I think f4 looks pretty good. We do have to make a move at some point. So I'm going to go with f4, thinking to play f5 on the next move. So that was a long think. Only move 16. Feels like a lot more has happened than 16 moves. But that was an important moment. And again, I feel like I can play decent chess. I think I can play better than 16 or even 17. I think I can play 18, 1900 level rated chess. Maybe even 2000 rated level chess when I have plenty of time on the board. But I need that time, because you see that some of these tactics I only saw after a lot of time. Like, that these checks would, fall prey to this. And then after a while I saw that then I would have this, It takes time to see these things, or to see tactics associated with this idea, which initially seemed to me like just a great idea. Like, he can't take and he can't just push. What's he going to do? Like, it took me a while to see that bishop c6 is a nice counterattack, but at the same time that there's a check, and that after the check the bishop falls, and so therefore, after take, he's not going to take the pawn, he's going to take with the queen, and then there's this check, the queen can save itself, and then the position seems like it's petered out into a draw, or maybe black's better because he's got this bishop on a great diagonal attacking a pawn that's weak. These are all the kind of considerations I think that are important. Again, I could be completely wrong, but I'm using my time trying to play good chess. I ended up playing f4. I'm not necessarily afraid of this because, again, even if he does give up the bishop for the knight, he probably doesn't want to do that. It's an open position. In open positions, bishops tend to be better than knights. And in the meantime, I've gained time. I'm pushing my pawns toward this king. I'm trying to get ready to attack him. Okay, so he does come after this pawn, but remember, that's not actually attacked, because if he takes, then I'm going to play check, like this. And once he deals with the check threat, or I guess he could deal with it this way. So once again, there's another tactic, because I thought I would have check and then win the bishop. But actually after check, he blocks this way. So that's interesting as well. So this is now under attack. I could sacrifice it, of course. Sometimes you need to sacrifice something. G'day Sam, E1T, how are you today? Welcome to the game, you've joined at a good time. My pawn on E4 is under attack. If I move it, my rook hangs. So his bishop is now definitely better than what it was before. One option I have is to put my knight back here. My knight can defend that pawn. That might be a nice way to go. Another option would maybe be to play check here straight away. Not sure that that's necessarily as good. After he takes. How to do this? Could move the rook off the diagonal. This is a vulnerable diagonal now. Can you rate my game after this game? Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds like a good thing to do. I'm trying to really learn deeply about chess, so we're going to analyze your game deeply together. Alright, let's see. What to do here. I just need time to come up with something. You don't always have time. Like if I play something like this, trying to defend the pawn that way, he takes my knight, I take back, and although he then does take the pawn, I have opened the h-file, and also then I can play check, and there's no way for him to defend that. So I could actually play this now. This is an interesting idea. Again, threatening to take the knight and ruin the, open the pawns. And if he takes, then I'm fine. Because then if he takes, we've got check, which wins the pawn, wins the bishop. So this potentially works, but he's going to possibly play back here, adding more pressure to the pawn. Then I can move my rook. And if he takes... yes, this is a very difficult moment, actually. Difficult moment. I mean, this is certainly possible, but then this pawn storm comes with extra pressure against the knight, so maybe I don't mind this idea. I could also just carry on, but I don't think I have enough there. He takes the pawn. I give the check, he has to bring the knight back then. Then I take. Interesting. I could do this. When he takes, I go check and he comes back. Yeah, no, but as long as this h-file is closed, it's not really working for me. So again, this might work. Putting a rook on the g-file could be a good idea, but it does just give him this. Then I can play something like this with tempo. Again, this... I'm not afraid of him taking. I think that would be fine for me. At least it corrects my pawn structure. But it doesn't look like I'm going to end up having a mating attack here. So this game's going to drag on longer than what I thought. It's a 45-minute game with 45 seconds extra per move. And yes, I take a lot of time. I'm very slow. I am very slow. But that's the only way I can play half-decent chess. Alright. So what to do? This does definitely come to mind, just sacrificing. But I don't think I'm getting enough compensation there at all. So I might have to play something like this, and then when he comes back, I can defend the pawn again. Like this. Not really what I want to do though. Don't really want to be wasting time defending this pawn. I know there's a minute left, so I've got to hurry. Got to be a bit quicker. So I could do this, and then after this... Yeah, don't really want to do that, because his pawn storm then gets going, and he might be the one playing to mate me. If I play something like this and let him take, there's almost a nice check if it weren't for this pawn. So that's interesting. So again, brings this to mind. After he takes, I can play check, which again forces the knight to come back. And once the knight comes back there, I can take, but if he takes with this pawn, this square is a bit weaker. So I can then jump my knight here with a threat. Maybe I can even do that anyway. Let's say like this. He takes, I come here. If he takes, I come here. Nope, 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 nope. Just don't like any of this. I might have to do this. I'm just not a fan of it. I'm going to do this move. And after he plays this, maybe then I'll consider this. Because then if he takes, I take back with check potentially, or, you know, at least this keeps me in the game for the moment. I'm not super happy with it. You know, even playing a long game, you still run out of time when you have a slow mind like mine. Let's see. I might lose on time. I do lose on time a fair bit sometimes, unfortunately. Now, will I take the knight? That's the question. I probably will. I'll take the knight. Again, now the quality of the game will probably decrease for me. But the reason I'm happy to take the knight is now my pawn is actually defended. So let's say I play a move like this now. The queen still defends this pawn for the moment. If he does take this, I believe I have this check to win up, to pick up the bishop. So the pawn is indirectly defended, and I've moved my rook not only off the diagonal, but onto the same file as his king. So I'm not super happy. Something hasn't gone quite right for me. Maybe it came back to that move where I took the knight here with, okay, he's taken, but I've got check here with a double attack. And I don't see a way for him to defend the bishop now. He can't block with the rook. So I think he's... Hang on, what have I miscalculated? I've miscalculated something here, haven't I? How is he up 3 points of material here? I just realized that I must have lost material. All the way back here, I lost material. I've only just realized this, guys. This is insane. So he took the knight, I took the bishop. He took the bishop, I took the knight. And then he took the bishop. And I totally overlooked the fact that I'm down a piece here. I'm down a piece here. I didn't even realize. So he takes, I win the piece back, but he's up a pawn still. Wow, that's absolutely insane. That is really crazy. That is crazy. Now this pawn is under attack. This pawn's under attack. But I don't want to take it, because if I take, he's going to be able to further his attack against my king. I can't believe I'm playing a long game and several moves went by, probably half an hour of time. I didn't even realize I was down a full piece. And, you know, supposedly my rating is in the 1600s. By the way, I've lost 100 rating points over the past week or so since I started streaming. It's been on a losing streak. And that's, I think, because I took about a 6-month hiatus from playing. I used to play regularly. Haven't played regularly in a long time. Anyway, let's keep on playing the game. His king is arguably slightly less safe than mine, but it's perfectly safe for the moment. He's got an extra pawn and the ability to take yet another pawn. If he does that, I can put a rook here and guarantee a rook trade. You know, which might be nice for me. But he puts his king onto this file. And it's not clear how I'm supposed to... I mean, probably I have to try and use the pawn hooks to open the position more. But that's if he takes. If he doesn't take, do I have some crazy sacrifices here? No, I wouldn't say so. Not yet. Probably not yet. I would have a move like this. This move would threaten to take the rook, because he can't take back due to the pin. And so what he might do there, he might take. But if he takes, okay, my pawn structure becomes arguably slightly better than what was before, because these two pawns are currently isolated. After a trade, they would at least become sort of a pair once again. So... exactly. Takes. Okay, so now we need to make a move. Probably not a very good move, but it's a move. Got to keep on playing. I'll defend this pawn now, not give him the option of taking it anymore. So he sort of did the same thing. I'm down a pawn. That doesn't mean the end of the world. But it's not great, because also my pawn structure is worse than his. But we're going into an endgame where I've got a second on the clock. So he's pushed this. Hey, I thought I had 45 seconds extra for every move. I'm pretty sure this is a 45 and 45, so how come I didn't get an extra 45 seconds? I'm not sure. Yes, send your game through. Briefly though, before we look at your game, I'm going to look at my game and see what on earth happened there. And what went wrong. So I think this was all fine. The opening I think went well. I played f3. That took me a while, but you know, the evaluation is still relatively equal and I'm happy about that. And here I castled long. That seems to be fine. He started his pawn storm and I decided to try and trade bishops. And as we see, big blunder, as I didn't even realize until towards the end. Didn't even realize towards the end that this simply loses a piece. I thought I had everything here properly defended. But after he takes the knight, and I take bishop, he takes bishop with check. I take, he takes. I thought I was fine here, but clearly I just totally and entirely overlooked that entire sequence, that this knight would end up capturing not just one piece, but two. I mean, what about an absolute, you know, blind spot? Other than that, I mean, it was a great game. Other than the absolute turd right in the middle of the board, in the middle of the game, yeah, it was great, you know. And playing a piece down, I probably still played as I should. Tried to open this position. And I would imagine, you know, f4 there is fine, you know, as fine as it can be in a losing position. You know, and I managed to win a piece back at this point when due to his blunder. But the position, even though I won a piece back, he was still up a pawn. His pawn structure was still better. So there's probably not a lot to take away. Other than that, I played well. Honestly, I played okay, other than that terrible blunder. And also just entirely running out of time when I really thought I should have had 45 seconds every move, which doesn't seem like it was actually happening. So, okay, so essentially, why did I make that blunder is something I want to look at. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I was thinking about making this trade for a long time. And, you know, earlier in the game, before I castled, I did recognize that there were certain tactics, like if he takes the bishop, I take back, he takes the knight. So I realized I needed to castle to be able to, you know, recapture the knight. So that was fine, but I think I just so had my head down. I want to play this, get his bishop off the board. I just thought he would take. I guess if he takes, it is fine. You know, and that's what I had calculated, that would be fine. I also did calculate that if he takes this, I take here. And I thought that's an even trade. I thought if he takes here, I take here, that's an even trade. It just totally blindsided me that he then takes an extra piece. Had I seen that that was the case, and this is the last thing I'll analyze in this game before we look at your games. Had I seen that that was the case, what should I have done differently? So let's say now, you know, I'm in the game and I realize, oh my gosh, if I play this move, he's going to take my knight. And after I take, he's going to take this. And after I take, he's going to take this, meaning he wins an extra piece. So what I actually need to do is take care of that somehow. Maybe what I could have done is taken the knight. That would have been obviously a lot better than what I did do. Basically anything is better than what I did do. That would improve his bishop. So that's not great. Maybe I could move my king out the way. if I move my king out the way, then the variation would go like this. He takes knight, I take bishop. He takes bishop, I take rook. He takes knight, I take knight. He takes bishop. So what's happening there? Have I won an exchange there? I kind of need to go through that one more time. This is calculation practice. Sorry, we've got to put this effort in if we're going to improve. Then we're going to look at your games and we're going to put effort into your games too. So what would have been a good move to play here? The other thing is I don't need to go for this plan. I could have gone for g4 straight away. I reckon g4 here would have been a good move. Just on principle, opposite sides castling. Okay, I've castled. Yeah, so after a6, I think g4 here would be good. Because it's opposite side castling, you're trying to get the pawn storm going. And indeed, yep, that seems like it is a good move, good way to go. Just maintain the tension. You don't need to play something like this. This piece is already doing good work. By the way, have you guys ever seen Irina Krush? I'll put her name in here. She's on YouTube. And she's got some really great videos. Like, I think they're really good. She's good at explaining things. I don't know what level she is. She's probably some kind of a master. She might be like a woman grandmaster or an international master or something, but she's a very strong player and she just has a good way of explaining things. One of the things she says is, when your pieces are in a good spot, you don't have to move them. So like this whole plan of mine of trying to get rid of his bishop, it was premature. So let's say I had realized that doing this as I did in the game just ends up losing a piece. What else could I have done? Yeah, well, just g4. Just g4. What does he do? Let's say he continues his pawn storm. Computer says it's not so good. Why? Well, that's another question altogether. Can I continue on with h5 here? Then he plays b4. My knight probably has to move, but it has squares it can go to. So probably that's fine. If he does this, I probably can just come here. Yeah, this all seems to be working out. So unfortunately, this was just a blunder that ruined a game. And to be honest, I thought I had more. I thought I was going to be able to live off the increment, and it seems the increment didn't work. So anyway, let's have a look at Sam E1T's game and see what we can learn there. That one didn't go our way. We'll have a look at Sam's game, then maybe we'll have time to play one more game, potentially. We'll see. Alright, so Sam E1T. Let's go. Starts with e4. How long have you been playing, Sam? First and foremost, how long have you been playing for? While you get back to me, we'll start looking at the game. So e4, your opponent plays e5. Nice. Getting control of the center. d4 immediately. This is perfectly fine. It's not a move that's commonly played. Don't ask me why not. I think the reason why it's not commonly played is because if black takes, let's say you want to recapture the pawn. You capture with the queen. Now black brings their knight out, attacking your queen, and you have to lose a tempo, bringing your queen back. Computer says e3, but a normal move would just be d1. And because you've had to move the queen a couple of times, it might not be so good. That said, there's nothing wrong with it, and after this move, you don't have to take back. Another potential move would be like just to continue on with your development. So yeah, anyway, point is, it's a perfectly legitimate move, and actually maybe a very nice move. It's not one that I always consider. It's probably one that I almost never consider. But actually, yeah, absolutely not. It's a nice move, actually. Something I'm going to consider, because it's less often, it can catch people off guard. It's a little bit tricky. I think if you do play this and they take, I wouldn't take with the queen, just because it does give them such an obvious move. Whereas if you play this, now they have to consider what they want to do. Do they want to play a move like this to defend the pawn? If they do, they leave this pawn as a backwards pawn. They kind of have this awkward pawn structure. And you have obvious moves. You don't need to win the pawn back straight away. You can just continue your development. Your pieces are really nice and, well developed. And I'm sure that, this is probably actually a really nice opening to catch people off guard. And also very principled. You're striking in the center. You're getting your pieces developed. So I like that. So that is that what happened in this game? They took, and then you played c3. Okay, that's also a book move. Super aggressive play. 300 elo. Sure, it's 300 elo. Nevertheless, still trying to, understand as much as possible so that 300, it's probably never going to be a 3000, let's be honest, but it could be a 1300. And in my case, I'm 1600, 1700. I want to be 1700, 1800, 1900. So, this is a super aggressive move, offering a second pawn, which they take. And wow, you play bishop c4. This is so aggressive. Can I verse you? I want to see what the difference is between you and me. I'll be on my alt though. Yeah, 100%. We can play a game after this one then. What's your rating again, Fermented Skull? Just so I know. So bishop c4, super aggressive play. Don't care at all about the material, just going for pure, piece activity and aggression. I love it. Not necessarily my style, but I love it. So they play this move. You get a knight out, that makes sense. They're attacking your pawn, but you take, that also makes sense. Now your bishop is under attack, you better do something about that. Yeah, you might as well take. This all makes sense. He moves the bishop, the queen. What would I do here? I mean, I would like to, castle or take the knight. If you want to be super aggressive and keep being aggressive, you castle. And you say, I don't care if you take the pawn because I'm going to take with the bishop. So probably castle, which is what you do. Are you sure this is 300 elo? Man, you're playing perfectly so far and you've got a beautiful position. That's a nice move, attacking both of these guys. What do you do about that? You can move the queen away with a check, first and foremost. That's possible. And then you can move the knight away. That's probably what I would do. What did you do? You don't like this move. It's too easy for him just to take back in a variety of ways. I guess if he takes with the queen, then you've got a second pawn for the bishop, and this is a dangerous pawn. So if he takes like this, sure, you can say maybe it was worth it. You've opened him up a bit more. You've got rid of his dangerous pawn, and that's okay. But you've given up a lot of material at this point, and that's why black is better. But I think the move, just queen e2, which is check, and he has to deal with that check. Doesn't necessarily matter how he deals with it. Let's say he puts a bishop here. Now you can move the knight out of the way, and all of a sudden this pawn you can take at your own volition, and it no longer has the ability to become a queen for the moment. You've got more pieces active, and that's pretty nice. Okay. No worries, Fermented Skull. Definitely will have a game directly after this analysis. And I'm going to play against you like my full strength. Because as you see, I'm really, doesn't matter what the rankings are. The main thing is I'm trying to improve. Let me just fix up, looks like this, I got to fix up the screen so you guys can see the whole board. Sorry, I didn't realize that was a bit not working so well. Let's fix that up. There we go. That's a bit better. Anyway, as played. By the way, Sam, if you have any particular questions as we're going here, please do chime in. So yeah, you sacrificed the bishop. He took with the king, which is interestingly a mistake. But why? Do we want to provide a check here? getting your queen active. Again, the same sort of idea where at the moment you've got 2 pieces attacked. Sure, no questions. At the moment you've got 2 pieces attacked by his pawn. So that's a really strong pawn, but the ability to move away with check is a very important one. Here it's scary for me because the bishop can come out, I would think. And now again, you still have your queen attacked and you still have the knight attacked. The saving grace in this position is this knight can now jump up here, providing another check. And the king has to move. And wherever the king moves, you can then combine the knight with the queen and provide another check here. And now even if he can't take actually because the bishop's doing a great job. But I was going to say even if he takes, his king is so far out in the center of the board that you're very likely to checkmate him shortly. So, long story short, after he takes with the king, the reason that's probably a blunder is because he allows you to check, and after the check, we've already seen he can't play this move. There's really no other way for him to block the check with a tempo against your queen, so let's just say he moves. Now again, you can save the other piece. So, okie doke. Let's carry on a bit further here. He takes, you jump up here. The reason that's not good on the face of it is because it's just a lone knight. That's one problem. Yes, it's a check, but a knight on its own is never going to... I want to see what you'll do against my moves so I can learn to improve into your level. Absolutely great idea. And I want to do the same thing in general. So that's why, playing down, like playing people of a lower rating like yourself, probably won't be a huge challenge to me. But what will be a challenge to me, even playing against someone at a lower level, is actually trying to make the right moves for the right reasons. So that's why the rating doesn't necessarily matter to me. But in general, yeah, it's good to play against stronger players, and highly recommended. But yeah, if you're trying to attack the king, you need a lot of pieces around, and a lone knight is not enough to do it. You need to bring more pieces to the attack. Let's say he attacks your knight. Now your knight is under attack. Yes, it's defended by the bishop, but don't forget these guys are all attacked as well. I suppose here you can provide this check and still, do stuff like this. But yeah, in general, you'd rather just get these attacked pieces active while you have a chance. And don't try and checkmate someone just using a knight. Alright, anyway, so as played, he then brought his king back into the center of the board. This again gives you plenty of opportunities now. Of the two, probably I like doing it with the queen again to get it away from being attacked. Computer reckons we should do it with the rook, and I can see why, because now we're actually taking full control of both of these squares. And where does the king go? The king can't really do anything, so he has to start blocking now. He has to put a piece here. And after he does that, let's say he does this, because now he's maybe threatening this in the future. Oh, this is a complicated position. What would I play here? What would I play? I mean, you still have to deal with this threat to the queen and to the knight. So, still want to move the queen. This doesn't necessarily cut it because the bishop's very well defended. This move is nice because you threaten this check. So probably queen d5 makes most sense. He can take the knight there if he wants. It might be dangerous for him to do so, even if he gets a queen. Can we give this check here? Pushing him away. And then we can always pick the queen up at this point. And, soon we might play check, or we might play this. Anyway, so there's options there. But as played, you put the queen here, which is, yeah, understandable. Like, I was thinking of that as well. It's not a terrible move. It's just not as good as putting the rook there. And now you probably want to move the knight, I would say. Which is good. How long is this game? Oh my gosh, it's a 63 game move, which ends a 63 move game that ends in a draw. After all this, this is hectic. You said. Sorry, I wasn't there. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat a bit more. Just make sure if you have any questions. So he moves the knight. Now we could take this pawn off the board immediately. But yeah, these positions are so complex. Another nice move here might be bringing the knight in with it. Because now that... How can I get rid of this arrow? It won't let me get rid... Yeah, there we go. You can bring the knight in now that the bishop no longer controls this square. And this is nice on the face of it because you hit the queen, you also hit this pawn. And how does he deal with that? He could bring the queen here. That's an option. Gives you that you can trade and then play check, but it's not going to be good enough. I'll show you those moves. So let's say he comes here. His queen is defended. The problem is after takes, check, he comes over here towards you. Now your knight is, all on its own again, and he's got all these pieces. Remember, we've given up a lot of material, and he's just going to be better. So that wouldn't necessarily work. I am tempted just to take this pawn. The other thing is, because his knight, not only does it block his bishop, it also blocks his queen's defense of this bishop. The bishop is still defended here, but yeah, it does make sense to put a rook on e1 here. And, now he could potentially lose the game if he develops his knight. He gets mated. So just putting pressure is sometimes a good thing to do. So putting pressure on this bishop now is nice. But yeah, another option here would have been just to regather the pawn because it's a dangerous pawn. But what did you do? I like that move too. It's a very understandable move. Pressuring the queen, pressuring the bishop. What's wrong with it? Maybe it's again this move. Queen e5, the same idea, supported by the knight. And what do? Like if you trade, if you trade everything, you're going to lose. Because he's just got so much more material and this killer pawn. So I think the reason this is bad is probably just because of queen d5. Sorry, queen e5. But nevertheless, it's a nice idea hitting both of these guys. Just didn't quite work here. So he defended this way, which is a blunder. And maybe this is a blunder because of this. Let's say he takes the knight. Yeah, I can see something there. This is just pure tactics. This is pure tactics. So can you guys see why, after this move, why can he not take the knight? Yep. Fork, exactly. Takes the knight, runs into a fork, and bye-bye queen. So that's just pure tactics. And in these kinds of positions, in general, in these kinds of positions that you get from the opening you played, where you just disregard your pawns, have my pawns, I don't care about them, I'm going to get my pieces out, and you end up, down material, but with a lot of piece activity, everything revolves around the tactics. And the positions are extremely complex. So it's probably good for me. My general vibe of chess is I like to play things a bit more calm because I can understand it better. When things are super wild and complex and extremely sharp and tactical, my brain just explodes a little bit and I can't quite handle it. But it's probably really good training for me to analyze these sorts of games and positions. Doesn't matter if they're blunders and blunders. To understand why they're blunders helps. It's good tactical training. So here you took with the queen, which is probably the last move we need to look at the moment because that's a big, big blunder. There's no reason to do that. He can simply take with the knight. He took with his queen, which is ridiculous. Should have just taken with the knight, and now it's essentially just game over, because what are you going to do? I mean, you can trade knights, but then you're just completely down in material. You can put a rook here to try and pressure the knight, but he can simply take like this. And once again, this game should just be all over at this point. So let's leave it there. I'd say in general, it was pretty good. Like, and you can see the other thing with these tactical games is one step the wrong way just, changes the evaluation completely. That's what I mean by sharp. That's what's meant by a sharp position is, you've got a razor's edge that you can walk along, but if you slip off that razor's edge just a little bit, you're down in the pits. And from a practical perspective, I prefer to play positions where there's a bit more wriggle room, and I'm not going to win necessarily with a spectacular checkmate very quickly, or with a beautiful tactic necessarily, but there still always are tactics in chess, but where I can play the game, and even if I make a mistake, I can go on and I can push on for a draw, etc. If you fork on that move, queen takes knight. Which move was that? Oh, on this move, yeah. Well, if you fork, it comes with a check. So queen doesn't quite have time to take knight. Not only that, but the knight is defended by the bishop. Anyway, let's leave it there. Formented Skull, what's your chess username? And let's play a game together. A little bit before. Maybe in this position you were talking about, fork the queen. Queen takes knight, but then there's this fork. That's what we spoke about before. Anyway. Blazed number. Blazed number. Let me try and find you and send you a challenge. Won't play a super long one. We'll do a 15-10 if that's okay with you. That way we've both got time to think, but it won't go on forever. Now, just got to work out how to send these challenges. How do I do this? Dun, dun, dun. Blazed number, there we go. Standard, we'll go 15-10. Play. And I'll just fix up this screen again. So I'm white, I'll start with e4. Again, I'm happy to commentate my moves because chess is it's always a, what do you call it? It's a transparent game. So you can always see what my intentions are. But yeah, we'll try and learn a little bit here. So I'm going to play very standard. Bring my knight out. Put pressure on the pawn. The Petrov defense. I'm going to take the pawn. That's what I typically do against the Petrov. You take the pawn. I'm going to put my queen here. And now you got to be a bit careful. You got to be very careful, in fact. I'll tell you why you got to be careful too. I won't tell you what to do. Okay. That's fine. I'm going to play this move now, I think. Just attack the knight. Try and get it to move. Try and get that knight out of my grill. It's all up in my face right now. If I can move your knight away, then I should be able to have some attacks. For example, if you move your knight here, okay, so you counterattack my knight. That's probably a good move. It's probably a good move, but I'm going to calculate here. If I take your knight with my pawn, and you take my knight, that's basically even. Then if I take this pawn, I'm up a pawn. And the only way for you to recapture that pawn is with the queen. And at that point, I believe I can play the move f4, attacking your bishop. And your bishop's pinned to the king. So you can't take. Your bishop probably would get lost then. I wonder if you can castle then. So if I take the bishop, you put a rook here, but with a pawn there I should be fine. So I kind of think that works for me. I think I can take the knight. Another option for me would maybe be to take the pawn with a fork on two very valuable pieces. If you want to take back, you have to move your king. And once you do move your king, winning my knight, I also win a knight. And then you can take a pawn back, and I can't take because your rook comes over here, and that would be a problem for me. So I think I'm just going to take the knight. I think I'm going to take the knight. And I think this works out for me. So I think, I might be wrong, but I think what's happened here is the opening hasn't gone your way. And, you know, if that's the case, we'll have a look at the Petrov. It's one of the openings that I definitely do want to learn to play a bit better. Because there's an important person in my life by the name of Petra. And Petrov defense is Petra's defense. Alright, now, in this case, I have an opportunity to defend my knight. I thought you probably should have taken the knight. Maybe not. Maybe what you've done there is okay. Since the bishop's basically doomed anyway. Doesn't matter if you take the knight, not necessarily. So, but what I'm going to do now is take. Because now my queen does defend my knight, and I've won another pawn. And furthermore, with my queen behind the knight, x-raying your king, I am threatening some very dangerous attacks. So even though I've won a pawn, I don't believe you have time to take the pawn back. And you've taken the pawn back, but I think the reason you don't have time to do this is because of these discovered checks. The knight now can jump away with check. Not check by the knight, but check by the queen. And the queen is under heavy fire. The queen can block the check, but that doesn't help. I still will take that queen. Doesn't mean the game is over yet. I still have to convert the advantage, but from a practical perspective, I've got such a big advantage in this position, as long as I haven't missed anything right now. But it is check, so there's no way for you to do something like check. Even if you could, my knight would be able to take. My advantage here is so big that in the long run, it should be no problem to win. So now I'm going to take my chance to take your queen off the board. And although you develop your bishops to nice squares, which is absolutely true, it should not be enough to win the game. I should be able to develop now my pieces, and the sheer material advantage I have should overwhelm the material that you have. So I think check is basically an easy move to play. Any trades from this point should benefit me. Okay, getting your king more active is perfectly understandable. I can now play this check if I want, which comes with a double attack. I'll play it. Doesn't require a lot of thought because my queen was misplaced on this square anyway. My queen was misplaced because it was blocking in my bishop for one thing, and the other thing was it was potentially in future going to run into a trap with your rook. You know, say your bishop moves out the way and your rook would pin my queen to my king. So I'm always happy to move my queen out the way with check and a double attack, giving scope to my bishop and just reducing the ability of you to attack my queen in future. So now I have the ability to win another pawn with check, and the king either has to step onto the back rank, well, it can't move there. It can't move there either because of the bishop. So basically either the king moves here, in which case I can win a rook, or the only other move is that this bishop moves back, which is not scary for me. It's not scary for me to have the bishop move back here. So I'm happy to win another pawn. And now I'm happy to win a rook. It might even be, it's pretty close to mate. I could take the knight instead, actually. Is that better? could take the knight because the king, in that case, doesn't have any squares except this. But that's terrible because I take the rook then after that. And if instead the bishop blocks, then I take the rook. So I'm going to take the knight first with check. And the king moves. Now I could take the bishop, but the king moves again. So it's better for me to take the rook. This bishop cuts the king off this way. The king can't move, so the only thing left to do is block a couple times with bishops. And it's going to be checkmate. So we take, and that's the game. So essentially, good game. What went wrong in that game was the opening. There's nothing wrong with playing the Petrov defense, which is characterized by this move, knight f6. Typically, after takes, you probably can take the pawn, but you need to be very careful. You can see, the evaluation here is in white's favor. Yeah, well, we can play one more if you like, if you want to have another go, but it's up to you. Let's try and learn something about the Petrov first. If you do take the knight, you have to be very careful about this move, queen e2, which attacks the knight. And the reason you have to be so careful about it is because of the discovered attacks against the king, which is what ended up happening. It ended up happening a few moves later down the line. Like if we fast forward a bit, we ended up having this discovered attack against the king, which won the queen. But you have to be careful of it from the very get-go. For example, I'm attacking the knight. If you move the knight back, straight away that same tactic occurs. With the discovered check, also hitting the queen. That's probably the best that you can do, but now you're just in a terrible position and it's very hard to come back from that. So what else is there in this position? Well, I think the standard move here... well, what is the standard move here actually? I don't even know. I don't play this from the black side. Is it to put your own queen here? It might be to put your own queen here. Because now if white takes the knight, you can play the move, let's say d6, to attack this knight. And the knight can't move back because then you pick up the queen. Which means the knight's essentially stuck. So I might, carry on, do something else. And now you can take the knight. And you've regathered the material. So if you play this way within the Petrov, where, after pawn takes, if you want to take this pawn, after the queen comes out, I believe the correct move is you also bring your queen out. And that's critical to get rid of any of these discovered checks. So that's one really important thing to know in the Petrov. That's probably enough to know at this point. As for the rest of the game, defending the knight this way probably was just wrong because I got to attack it again. And it doesn't matter really how you defend the knight. You defended it with the bishop, and I was able to take the knight, which looks like it wasn't the best move actually. Actually, the evaluation here is relatively even. Sam E1. Yes, you can play with me too. We'll play a game after this one. Sam E1. We'll play one game. Then after that, I might play one more game, on my account against a higher rated player, and then we'll probably call it a day. So, why is it even here? I thought if you take my bishop back, I should be doing fine after I take the pawn, attacking your bishop. Maybe the way for you to go here is just to castle straight away. Now I certainly can't take the bishop because you put the rook here and my queen is toast. And in the meantime, my pawn is maybe a little bit too far advanced for this particular moment in the game. It's a bit too early for me to have a pawn up here. if I want to defend this pawn, it's going to require me becoming a bit overextended. And for that reason, it's still pretty even. So actually the way you played was okay. And the way I played after this move, d3 seems like it was incorrect. No, not d3. When you put the bishop here, I had a better move. So what was my better move? I'd love to know. Maybe it was this idea. This was the other idea I was thinking of. Taking this pawn, attacking both of these. The second game we talked about. What was the second game? Do you mean Sam E's second game? Because he said he has 2 games. But yeah, after that, and then I take... Maybe you would bring the rook here, I think would be best. Again, my queen's a bit displaced. So I might want to play something like, I don't know, check? It's not so clear, and you can see it's pretty easy for me to lose any advantage. Maybe I could play even a bishop out would be a good candidate move, just continuing my development. And maybe ultimately I'm going to castle long here and then try and throw my kingside pawns toward the king. But anyway, yeah, we'll probably leave this game there, because certainly at this point it became essentially impossible. I'm defending the knight, I've got all these threats, and you know, once I won the queen, there was really no stopping the rest of it. Alrighty, we were going to play one more. Okay, let's play one more game. Let's do one more. Let's give you a rematch. And then Sam, we can play one after that if you like. Fomented Skull, I am sending you a rematch request currently. Maybe Sam, maybe we'll play our game if Fomented Skull's gone away from the computer or something. What was your username again, Sam-E1? Oh, don't worry. Fomented Skull is back. This time Fomented Skull's got the white pieces. Plays with e4. I'm going to go e5. I also want to try and stake a claim in the center of the board. The bishop's opening. Nice choice. Knight f6, putting pressure on the pawn. And also just getting myself ready to castle. Defending the pawn makes a lot of sense. I don't know the theory here. I kind of feel that, you know, I want to play e5. I want to play e5 and just attack your bishop. But after you take and I take back, I feel that your bishop's actually getting stronger there. So I also want to play c6 to prepare d5. But something tells me this is the wrong move, like theoretically. Let's say maybe you put a knight here. Then after this, let's say take, your knight takes, my knight takes. Again, your bishop seems relatively strong. So what I might do instead is... Well, I don't really know. Don't really know what's best here. It's kind of difficult. This bishop's opening, if you don't know the theory, and I don't, it can be a very difficult one to play against. So let me try and think about what I want to do here. I'm going to play this move anyway. I'm going to play c6 regardless. And my thought is, if you play knight c6, okay, that's a good move too. But now that you don't have the control of d5 that you would have if you had played a move like this straight away, I think I can get away now with playing d5 and staking my claim in the center. Because if you take with the pawn, I take back, and you can't take this pawn, as far as I can tell, because I have it well defended. Yes, you can provide a check, but I have a couple of ways to deal with that. And probably the most direct way given that I've already got the center, which itself is an advantage at this point, I have a couple of options. I'm going to play... What's the best way? Because I do want to challenge myself to play the best way as far as I can. Probably going to just see if I can trade bishops. And at this point in time, a trade of bishops is inevitable because you can't come back here. You can't go there without allowing, a trade. Yep, so I can take bishops now. This is very, very interesting, and you may have made a blunder there, so I'm going to have to calculate this. But if I take and you take back, can I play this check with a double attack on the knight? Maybe. The knight can jump back, but then I can immediately play d4, attacking that knight, and the knight is pinned, can't move, so I think that's going to be good for me. At the very least, I can trade and argue that at the very least the knight is misplaced. But I do think that this check will end up winning the knight after d4 is played. Is there anything else I need to be aware of there? I'm sure you can get some counterplay though. You probably will get counterplay. So another option for me would just be to play like a6, and kick you back, then maybe pin you and try and castle. And that might be a more solid way to play where I'm sure I still have an advantage there. So it's kind of an interesting decision for me. Is it worth playing this and committing my pawn structure to a kind of strange pawn structure? See, the problem with that pawn structure for me, even if I do manage, let's say you put your bishop there, I take, you take back with a tempo on my queen and also a tempo on the bishop, on the pawn. I would probably move my queen here for that reason. It should be fine. I'm going to do it. I think it's probably the critical move. But I do also think that a6 here would have been very good too. Ooh. With this move, it should be the same story. I think I can still just play d4 and this knight is pinned. So I don't necessarily win this knight, but now I also have the additional option of playing a6. And where does this knight go? Maybe you can defend it like this, but that doesn't work. So I think now a6 is probably even better. There's also this. This is a very nice move now, because this move pins this knight and just simply threatens to win the other knight, and also furthers my development. So I'm probably tossing up between this and this and this. Three nice looking moves. Of them, if I play this, you're likely to unpin the knight. And that seems like it probably favors you. If I do this, you might play this anyway. And then I take, and you take here with an attack on my queen. So I'm going to play this move regardless. I'm going to play d4 and just immediately attack this knight. Check, that's fair. I'm going to have to now take back, I think, because otherwise you've got a nice fork. So perhaps you can save this knight, but you haven't saved the other knight. And we'll see what happens next. This knight has to choose a square. Ooh, I think that's a mistake, and it's the same mistake. It's the same mistake. I play check. I also fork the knight. Your audio setup is a bit weird. Everything is on the left channel. Are you sure? Let me see about that. Thank you for letting me know, by the way. It shouldn't be. I'll have to have a look at that later. Yeah, sorry about that if that's the case. So I could also consider this. Bishop b4, pinning the queen. You could break the pin, and then after I take, the knight comes back. So probably better is just to take the knight, and now I again have a lot of extra material. I've also got space, and I have a nice easy plan. Develop my pieces and carry on from there. So I can play this to attack the queen. If this is played, I can take, you take back, which attacks my bishop. My bishop can then drop here to defend this pawn. What else have I got here? So I'll have to have a look at that audio later though, because I do want the audio to come through sounding good. It shouldn't be only coming through one channel. All right. Now, what do I play here? If I take, then I'm kind of opening my own king. I'm not sure I want to do that. I could also consider a move like this to keep things closed. Even if you take, interestingly, I can take back with a tempo on the queen. Queen can take pawn. Queen could take pawn. But then I can guarantee myself a trade of queens, which is probably good. Look, there's a lot of options here for me. I probably don't need to overthink this. I think what I'm going to do is simply bring my knight out. This move actually seems quite tempting. Quite tempting to play this move. There are, of course, a host of moves that could be played here. Could even drop the bishop back in that case. You know, I like that actually. I'm going to play this because I do want to get castled. At the end of the day, what I want to do is castle and make sure my king is very nice and, you know, snug and warm. This pawn is already defended. So here I have two options. One is to take, but the other is just to drop back. And I think that's actually nicer, because you can't take the pawn without losing the queen. You can't attack my queen either, because I take your queen with check. Okay, so that move makes sense. Now I can castle though. Now I can castle, potentially giving this pawn away. I could play this as well, but another option, I think now actually makes sense to develop my knight, just to defend this pawn one more time before I do castle. I think everything's good. You can play this now if you want, but my bishop's always got a whole host of safe squares to get to, and to be honest, I could probably sacrifice the knight. If I wanted to, I could do it that way. That would be perfectly legitimate. Also, I could take with the bishop, take back with the knight, and then I'm threatening this pawn, and essentially I get one pawn, two pawns, and potentially a third pawn for the bishop. I think that's probably the way to go. 1, 2, if you play this check, I take, and then play this check. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take. And I'm going to take like this. Hopefully I'm not blundering something. I've looked at this move, which pins my knight, but I don't think it works. Okay, you take that. That shouldn't work. It shouldn't work, because at the very least I've got this move. Do you know what I've got? I've got a lot of moves here that I could consider, and all of them are good. One thing I can do also is just castle. If I castle and you take the knight, I put a rook here, and your queen, it's good night for the queen. You shouldn't play boring when you're up so much material strategically. What do you mean by that? When you're up so much material, shouldn't you play boring when you're up so much material strategically? Do you mean that, like, sacrificing the bishop for the pawns was maybe risky, and that I should have just played something more simple? Is that what you mean? So if I play check, where does the king go? I'm going to castle. I'm actually just going to castle, because I'm not afraid of this move. I'm not afraid of that move. You're already up 2 pieces, and then you start sacrificing and making the position sharper with potential for counterplay. Bishop c7 was just so easy to win. It's true, bishop c7 was certainly possibly an easy win. But it also gives white some space. And after bishop c7, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with bishop c7. Absolutely, I could have played bishop c7. But then there's also, you got to consider what happens if a4 is played. Now my queen's kind of got to move, and then maybe there's this that can be played, and these pawns are gathering a lot of space, and that's also putting me under pressure. Whereas the way I played it, straight off the bat, I get 2 pawns for the bishop. I still have heaps of extra material, like heaps of material. So 2 pawns for a bishop is almost equal material anyway. In the meantime, it's also ruined his remaining pawn structure. And so materially, it's basically the same. There's a good chance I'm going to win a 3rd pawn for the bishop. His pawn structure is not so good, and he doesn't have initiative because his pawns are no longer actively pushing me back. Instead, I'm still the one that's very active. But yes, bishop c7 still would have been another way to go and still would be better, no doubt. All right, so I castled, and he put the bishop here. So in this position, I've got a fork. That's definitely nice. The only question is, would I prefer to play this check? And then when he moves, I could play another check and guarantee a queen trade, and that would essentially be the end of the game. Or his only other square to move to other than this is this. And if he does move there, then what do we do there? Then it's maybe not so clear. Another move could just be simply take this pawn like so. Again, not afraid of him taking this. And so this is probably what I would do. If he takes the bishop though, if the bishop takes knight, it's slightly annoying. I take queen, and I've given up material for really no reason. So actually I will just land the fork in this case. In this case, I'll simply land the fork. And probably next move, I'm not afraid of this, so I might put a rook here. The other option would be put my knight here. This seems like a nice square for my knight. That's certainly a nice possibility. It's either that or this, essentially. The knight here is under threat, should be noted. So, yeah, maybe there's something better. I could go check. He takes, I take, he takes, winning a pawn. Why should I allow that, though? This gives up a knight. But it also lets me get very, very active with a check. He has to come back here. Then there's this check. He has to give the bishop up, really. My rook comes in. It's definitely looking like a winning position. Of course, I can take the rook as well. I could also play this move. Queen a4 to defend this. That way, if he takes my knight, I can play this move, which is pretty close to checkmate. Not quite checkmate. It's check. He comes here. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. I might be missing something, but I think this is actually a defense of both knights, because he can't take this knight, at least not right now. And if he takes this knight, I take the rook with check. And if he comes this way, it's looking like I'm probably going to mate him. And if he goes the other way, this rook comes back, and again, the alignment of the king and queen becomes an issue. The other thing, Fihag, is I am trying to play in a very accurate way. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, if I play check, it looks as though we're getting pretty close to a mate, but I think I need maybe one more piece in play to really get this mate happening. So I think now's the time to actually bring my other knight closer to the action. Bring my other knight closer to the action. His bishop's doing a good job. we'll see what happens. I mean, I still have a lot of extra material. Perhaps I'm not going to find the correct checkmate, but if I need to, I can always then simplify down in future. So I don't think we need to worry about anything here. This might be an option for him, but actually probably not. I'm going to play, I think I've got a tactic here, which is check. Ooh, actually there's a better tactic. It's the immediate check. And there's the discovery. Always got to be careful. The discovery is landed, and now the queen is gone. Alright, so that's worked out pretty nicely. But, yeah, I'm not claiming to be the best chess player. Don't get me wrong. I guarantee you I'm very aware that I probably make a lot of mistakes. I definitely make a lot of mistakes. If you saw the first game I played today, was a game where I hung a piece and didn't even realize I hung the piece for like half an hour worth of play, which is pretty bad. Alright, so h3 is played. h3, probably I'm going to start like this. Just attack the rook, attack the pawn, put my knight on a beautiful outpost square. If it's captured, it can be replaced by the other knight. And things are looking good. Things are looking very good. This pawn is weak, and once this pawn drops, it'll be an open file. So I'm happy with this rook here, just defending this pawn. I'll probably bring this other rook over to e8 in order to attack this pawn and hopefully take it. And then there'll be some discovered check, possibilities, or maybe then I'll double my rooks. And, pretty shortly, everything will fall apart. So this move, the rook can't come here, here, here. It could come here, but it's not doing a lot there. It could come here, but it's not doing much there. So the rook actually doesn't have a lot of prospects here, so I'm going to carry on with my plan of attacking this pawn, which I don't think this pawn can be defended at all at this point. The rook would always be taken. The bishop can't get there. And yeah, the material advantage now is clearly too good, clearly too great, too overwhelming. So bishop takes. I now have the option of playing this as well, but let's keep it simple. Let's attack the rook. This pawn can be now defended, but at the expense of losing an exchange. Yeah, so this game, for all intents and purposes, is over. So I can take this rook now as well. But, I've got to be a little bit careful, don't I? My queen is attacked. So look, I'll take. And now I've got a lot of options. I'll take here, and really I can just take the rook. That's what I'll do. Of course, the king could have come here to defend the rook, but I still have 2 extra rooks in the position and a passed pawn, so there's clearly nothing much more to do. What I'm going to do now is just put 1 rook here to cut off the king. And now I think it's just made in like 2. One move like this. Now the king is cut off and has to go back. And now the rook comes back and there's nowhere for the king to go. So good game, Blaze Number. Good game. Better than last time. I like this, bishop's opening. I should look at how to actually defend against it. I ended up playing the move c6, which seems okay. But I think what you need to do is probably put a knight here to try and prevent me from playing d5. Because once I play d5, as has happened in the game, I just have this really nice center, which in itself is a nice little advantage. It's not a big advantage by any stretch, but it's a nice little advantage. Here, maybe you should have just traded bishops. And again, like you can see, my development is more rapid than yours, and I have central, control. That's why I have a small edge. But after you defended the bishop with the knight, It was just a tactical error, because after takes, and check, the knight is essentially doomed. And once you lose that much material, the game goes from hard, which chess is always hard, it goes from hard to extremely hard. The London, but I did it backwards with the knights. Yep. So the main line after c6 is knight f3, I think. Yeah, I believe that is the main line, indeed. And then, unfortunately, you fell for this trap twice, so you got to be very careful about checks, particularly when there's an undefended piece. So when you're going to put any piece where it's undefended, always got to be careful about that and very suspicious of it. If you're thinking of putting a piece somewhere it's undefended, you got to be very, very skeptical about whether it's actually a good move. After that, there really wasn't a lot to do. This was a nice move. Like, I could have just taken the pawn, but that actually, of course, it's still winning for me, but it helps you get your queen to a better square. Your bishop can get to a nicer square now, so I didn't want to do that. I was saying in the game, I was considering maybe playing this move. This would be nice for me. And if you take and I take back, hits the queen. If the queen now takes this pawn, at the very least, I can play check and get a queen trade. For example, after this, just trade queens. And now my position is basically much better and very little risk. So, I can continue on with a check like this. For instance, you got to move the king again. Things are perfectly fine for me. I castle and there's just no risk. But in the end, it did take a long time to end up coming up with this move, on the basis that after this, I was going to play my bishop here, which is what I did. And I thought, this is just uncomfortable for you, and it lets me castle. I don't have to worry about any of the complications that we looked at before. And then there was this moment here where was it this moment? No, the queen moved, I put the knight here. Now b4. And here Fihag was saying, why not just come back bishop c7, keep it all simple. Well, I could, but the reason I didn't is because, what happens if these pawns get going? Like, where do I put my queen now? I have to put it here. What if now this is played? Now I've got to put my queen here. Now what if this is played? Where do I put my knight? I mean, sure, I can put it here. But now there's this. Basically, white gets counterplay in this line. And of course, I'm still better. You can certainly play it this way. But what I sort of thought was easier was just, I immediately get 2 pawns. That's immediate. I'm also immediately pressuring a 3rd pawn, and I'm the one still that has the play. White actually doesn't have a lot of counterplay here at all. Move the wrong knight. I was supposed to move the queen's knight first. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yep. And again, the reason is, you're trying to control the center in the opening. In this particular opening, clearly you've got this clamp on d5, which is why I can't really play d5 yet. Again, I can play it, but if I do so, you're the one that has, a beautiful bishop on this diagonal leading towards my king, which I don't want to allow. That's why I first try and play c6 to prepare d5. And if you bring the queen's knight out first, you put some more pressure on that square. Then, if I pin this knight, now, I don't know the theory, but perhaps now you can play something like this, so that were I to take the knight, you can replace it and still have this pressure. I guess I can play this move anyway, though, because the pin is quite effective. But yeah, this certainly would have been an improved version of the game. You can then break the pin. Let's say I castle and you castle. I'm just making these moves up, but that would have been a lot better than what happened in the game. So, Sam E1T, let's play a game. Did you want to play a game, or did you want me to analyze another one of your games? Otherwise, Otherwise, I might play another higher rated opponent, potentially. But I am happy to keep playing these games and just, try and find the best moves, because that's still good training for me. Hopefully it's good training for you guys and instructive. But yeah, Sam E1T, if you want to let me know what you want to do, if you want to play a game or analyze a game, Fihag, likewise, you're welcome. Otherwise, if no one wants to play at the moment, I might play another game against someone in the pool. He's gone? Yep, sure. All right, well, I'll play one more game in my. Oh no, he has actually given me a challenge, a 10-minute challenge. If he's there, we'll play. If not, he's back. All right, cool. So we're playing 10 minutes, no increment. Again, I'm going to go e4, e5. The knight comes out. I'll bring my knight out as well. Italian game. My standard is to basically be symmetrical here. The Italians are fantastic opening. I want to try and get castled as well. But I might have already made a little mistake there, potentially. The center fork trick, does that work? No, it doesn't work yet because this bishop would fall. So I think that's still the case. I think I can castle because if you take, I take, center fork trick, I take. So that should be fine. So I'm gonna castle. But I can see that essentially in this particular position, white claims ownership of the d5 square. Much as I'd like to claim ownership for that myself. Now, can I take here and use the center fork trick myself? Not quite. Or maybe I can. Maybe I can, because I win a pawn first. Then we trade bishops. But I think I don't love that quite as much. What else I can do? I can just get my own, pieces out. Interesting. What I might do is I'm going to play a5. That way, if this move is played, I can just take. And also, if you attack my bishop has a nice little hidey hole here on a7. The pro strategy against people with piece animation set to slow, yeah. And also a brain set to slow. Alright, so we'll go 10 minutes. I do have to play relatively quickly, so Fihag can stay up a little longer. But, if it's bedtime, it's bedtime. So, the Italian game is extremely tricky. I mean, chess itself is extremely tricky. Alright, so that's a nice move, just improving the position a bit. I might play h6. Am I sure about that? No, of course I'm not sure about that. It's difficult to be sure of pretty much anything in chess. If I play something like this and you play, let's say, a bishop here, am I so afraid of that? Probably not. What do I want to do? Again, you've got control of this square, but I control this square. That's kind of an interesting dynamic. It's a very interesting dynamic. Let's play this. I'm not going to think forever about that particular move. Connect the pawn chain. Let my light squared bishop potentially come out. And I think, if a piece lands here, I'll challenge it. I was probably more afraid of the bishop landing here, to be honest. Because now I think I just get a free tempo. I don't think this knight's doing anything too dangerous. Typically, it's not advised to give the knight and the bishop 2 pieces for the pawn and the rook. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying typically it's not advised. And the reason is because, your bishop's actually very active. It's a very active bishop. And although in some respects, okay, you take, fair enough. I'll take as well. Take and take. let's see what happens here. It's going to be interesting. So I think, at least theoretically, I should have an advantage here. Now, after this move, I can take. You take back. I need to move this. But I don't need to take. I can also just carry on with my development here. And I think that's what I'll do. I think I'll just carry on with my development. Now I'm threatening to take, and when you take back, to take again. You take, I'll probably take with my queen. There's really no reason why I shouldn't take with my queen. And at this point, I feel like I should be better. I mean, it's not by any stretch an extremely... yeah, I'm not saying don't do it, but don't do it. I've got the bishop pair, which is in itself, technically an advantage. Perhaps especially as the game goes on and as we approach more of an endgame. Okay, so I've got to try and figure out what's white trying to do with c3. Probably trying to dispute my control of the d4 square. Alternatively, maybe trying to play this move. After takes, and let's say takes, I'm still fine there though, because I can take again, and if you take, the rook hangs. And if you take like this, I take the rook as well. So actually this is not a threat as far as I can consider it. Is this a threat? I think I just take and take again. So I don't think this move necessarily achieved anything at this point. Another option for me here would be to play this, but it seems like a waste of time. I was going to say play this and then park my bishop here, but my bishop doesn't do a lot there once the queen moves. I think I'm probably better off. Looking for a different plan. Maybe I could try and strike in the center, but I'm not too sure about that. Good strategy here though by Sam, using good time management. I need to be quick. I need to be quicker and decide what I want to do here. So what do I want to do? What do I want to do? It's not very clear. Yeah, maybe I should play 30-second bullet. Good for my time management, but maybe not good for my development of my chess instinct and chess intuition. That's what I'm trying to do. Playing slowly, understanding the position, getting that understanding to my subconscious so that it's actually a very solid understanding, and later on when it is a solid understanding and my instinct will be informed well, then I can play a bit quicker as well. Anyway, I need to do something here. I need to do something good. I'm not clear on exactly what that would be. I do like the position of my rook, so I don't necessarily want to do anything about that at the moment. What I might do, if I move my knight, can you play this move then? Still not. Still really not quite, but what's the point in moving the knight? Don't really see a point to that. I'm actually going to play this move, not because I'm going to put my bishop here, but just to prevent the queen from ever coming here. That's really the only idea that I've got there. This move is a good one. Now if I take, you take back with a beautiful tempo against my queen. So that's a nice move. Good move, well played. What if I put a tempo on your queen straight away? It might actually be helpful for me in the end. I'm not sure about that though. Good move. Very good move. Well, what I'll do is probably... It's a tough one. I'm getting low on time, hey, so I'm going to have to play a bit quicker. I'm just going to move my king out of the way. It's going to move my king out the way. If you take, okay, I'll take back. So, my pawn structure there isn't great. Maybe I'm no longer better in this position. Maybe this was the wrong move. Not sure. Maybe I was never better. I'm not too sure. But I do need to play quicker anyway, so... Yeah, 12. Well, good on you. You're playing really good. Real good for a 12-year-old. There's young chess players who play at a high level. You know, international masters, grandmasters. Chess is one of those games where age doesn't seem to matter all that much. So what do you do here? I mean, I think it makes sense to take the bishop. I think, personally, because you do kind of ruin my pawn structure there, but my remaining pawns are still pretty useful. My remaining pawns there are still relatively useful. I think maybe a4 for me was a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe what I should have done in that position was just bring my rook across. And, you know, then in relation to this move, I could still move my king, but I don't know. It's not clear. It's really not clear to me. This is the kind of position where I would love to have had more time to delve into the details of what's right, what's wrong, and why it's right and why it's wrong. But a4, the pawn on a4 is a pain. I think it might be a pain, yeah. I mean, it does restrict your queen. To some extent, it restricts your other pawns. So it's not necessarily a terrible move. And I thought it was okay, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have played it. But I do wonder if I could have done something better in this game so far. All right, so now that's an interesting move. Now I think I'm going to play my knight up. And the reason I'm doing that is because I didn't want to take the bishop. If I took the bishop, you take back with a tempo on my queen moves, and you own the f-file. Alternatively, if I do something else, you take my bishop and you ruin the pawn structure, which I didn't love. But now my knight's installed on a nice square, a really nice square, where it actually can't be taken by any other pawns. It's kind of a hole in the position because the pawns have already gone beyond that knight. And so the only way you could take this knight is with this bishop. And if you take with the bishop, well, my bishop's just going to replace it. So now we're getting interesting. Now we are definitely getting into an interesting position. Is this a threat? Well, I can simply take back. So it shouldn't be a huge threat. Is this a threat? Maybe a little bit. If I take, you're probably going to take with the rook, I would say. And then I can move. And that should be okay, but for me, it should be okay. I'm not sure if it's great, but it should be okay. Am I really afraid of this move, though? Not sure. Let's say I take, you take, your rook gets active. Do I really want to allow that? Not necessarily. So what do I want to do then? What I might just do is move my bishop back. Again, I've got to be quick. The reason I'm moving my bishop back is so that this move, if you play it, it doesn't come with any tempo against my bishop. That's one reason. Locking down the position with f4, f5 should be an advantage for the minor pieces over the rooks, right? That's a really good point. That's an exceptionally good point. I don't know, but it does seem to be pretty logical. The only thing is f4, f5, you know, f5, his rook here on f1 does sit really quite nicely. Really quite nicely. Okay, so now he's just throwing pawns at me, which makes sense. By all means, it makes sense. What if I play this, though? Attacking this pawn. Then this is going to come. So I've got to be real careful. Do have to be very careful. What if I play this, though? Infiltrating into the position. That sort of looks pretty nice. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. Again, I'm very low on time. There's no increment, so I have to play a bit quicker than I'm comfortable with. Of course, I would like to calculate this in more depth, but yeah, it's an interesting thought. I think the rooks actually look pretty good here, and maybe in future he can double the rooks with f4, f5, and ultimately I think the rooks actually do really well there. But we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see. This is a very sharp position. I think I'm better, but if I am, I don't think it's by much. It's very dynamic. So from a practical perspective, this is anyone's game. I could win it, or Sam could win it. Definitely, it's an open question. The other reason, by the way, that I put my bishop here, I mentioned before, that it was to get away from this move coming with tempo. It was also to overprotect this pawn, so that my rook can come over here if I want it to, and this pawn remains protected. That was the secondary reason for putting the bishop back here. But right now, this pawn is under attack by two of my pieces. It's difficult to defend, unless you maybe do play f5. That's one way to go about it. f5 is there played. And now, let's see here. This is very, very, very interesting. I'm considering this check, to be honest, but no, queen will just take, so that doesn't work. Doesn't seem to work. Other moves that I can consider here. What about the rook lifting up to b6? Probably you're just always going to defend that, though. So how about instead we come here, pressurize this bishop a little bit more. Again, could be a mistake, and I'm playing quicker than I'm comfortable with at the moment. So, you know, if you saw this morning, I played a 45-minute game with 45-second increment. For some reason, the 45-second increment didn't actually seem to work, but it was a long game. Now you're going to see me playing a bit quicker, which is not what I like to do, because I really like to, again, focus, try and understand chess as much as possible. So now we get to take with check. I'm hitting this pawn. He's checked. The king has to come here. Should we take this pawn? I'm not too sure what else to do. What else is there to do? Let's start like this. Let's just cement this bishop in a nice spot. Try and keep some time on the board. I don't think I'm necessarily too much better. Now this does drop a pawn though, right? Because you interfere with the defense of the pawn. If this rook ever moves, I can trade queens. And now I should be able to take this pawn. I could take that pawn, but I'm going to put this bishop here first, so that this pawn's always defended. That's a move and a half. That's a really good move. Uh-oh. But I can take the rook. Take the rook, bring my other rook over. I'm going to lose on time potentially, but we'll see. I've got to play quickly now, real quick. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to push this. See if we get a trade here. I'm attacking this pawn. This one's defended. Okay, I am going to come here and attack this pawn. Now I'm going to take this pawn. I'm out of time though, unfortunately. Push this, see if I can get a queen up here. Check. Oh, I ran out of time. Good game. My fault for running out of time. Very good game. You know, well done. Great game, Sam. You well deserved that victory. Let's have a look at it. So it was an Italian, extremely tricky, the Italian. we played some pretty normal looking moves. I was critical of this knight move. Computer agrees with me that best move was starting a game without increment. Oh, 100%. Well done. Yep. You guys know my weakness already. Yeah, I was critical of this move, and you know, I didn't actually respond well. So h6 wasn't the correct way to respond to that move, interestingly. What would have been better is an interesting concept to consider. Like, what is the better move here? Is it, should I attack the queen, allow you to push my bishop back here? Maybe that's the better way to go, just to start with. Because that way, oh, you can't actually push my bishop back due to the pin. So let's say the queen moves. Is it now h6? Is that now stronger? It is stronger, but it's still not strongest. Now h6 and the knight has nowhere to go. Yeah, nowhere good to go. But like, if he just does what he did in the game, I guess my bishop here is a lot more active than it was in the game. Even if he starts pushing me around a little bit. Wow, apparently that's a big blunder. Am I supposed to just open this position up? No. Why is this such a blunder? Maybe I just come back and, you know, just sit in a nice position. But anyway, as played, you took... Sorry, no, that's not the position. As played, I attacked the knight. The knight came... there was this sort of double sacrifice. And here, I developed my bishop, and things are looking good. Things are looking very good for me. After the trade, I took with the queen, and my position is better with the bishop pair. Okay, a4 turns out was a fine move. Unfortunately, even though I had a fine move there, I spent so much time on that move. I went from 7 minutes and 24 seconds to 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So although it was a very good move, it possibly cost me the game. You're right, the bishop pair is good. It's a middle game, so bishop and knight is like 2 points versus a rook and a pawn. He develops the bishop. I thought that was a good move. I just moved my king out the way. Computer is approving of these moves. Yes, this does make my pawn structure ugly, and it was a bit frightening, but I didn't think I had anything better to do. But this move created a big hole on d4, which I was able to occupy. And then he started throwing pawns towards me. The interesting thing is, I am actually a lot better in this position, but as you saw, it was difficult for me to play. And I think I played well, and you know, in the end I had a good position on the board, lost on time, which is a legitimate loss, don't get me wrong. But my interest at the moment is playing accurately on the board, and I know that the time will come later. So this was a nice little retreating move with the bishop, overprotecting the pawn, getting out of any tempos there. Yeah, 30 seconds is my... Exactly, it is my increment. I need it as a minimum increment. Okay, but here I infiltrated with the queen, and here I was playing, you know, with little time, so I had to play quickly here. You closed down the position. I brought my queen further in. We had a trade with a check. King moved, and I just tried to solidify things. I won a pawn, got a queen trade, and then won a rook. So, I mean, really from here, I'm happy. I think we're both happy with this game, to be honest. I'm happy that I think I played a pretty accurate game, and I think you played a pretty good game too, Sam. Like, truly, it wasn't easy. You know, you sacrificed here on f7, and maybe that wasn't so good objectively, but practically you put me under a lot of pressure. Likewise with pushing these pawns toward me, put me under a lot of pressure, forced me to use a lot of time. I'm okay with the fact that I used all that time because I played accurately. I played accurately enough that in the end I had a winning position, and so that's the reason why I'm happy with what I've done. And you know, you're happy because, well, you won on time. So the move that I tried to play here was actually this check, which funnily enough probably isn't that great, but the idea is if you take the bishop, I then take with check. So that was what I tried to play, but the clock beat me to it. Alternatively, I guess, you move out of the way, and then, I don't know, I'll probably just take this pawn. This pawn is kind of destined for greatness. If you come here, that would be a really strong move. I probably have to move my king here. No, that's a terrible move, because now you're getting a queen, aren't you? I take your rook. It's difficult, though, for you, because if you take this, I take back, and I'm still going to get a queen. I'm not too IQ for take this bishop. No, sack rook. Don't A promote. Exactly. So anyway, if I had more time in this position, what would I have done? Is a very interesting question, because like this pawn's very dangerous. I think if I had more time, I probably would have spent it here in this position. And probably what I would do here is simply take. That's probably the simplest. Because what do you do now? There's really no counterplay in this position. If you do take this pawn, I've got a lot of options, but among them is just now I can push here. Of course I could take this pawn as well, but I don't need to rush. If you go after this pawn, then I can just push it anyway. You take, I take. This pawn's not going anywhere. And I've still got this pass pawn. I've still got these pawns. You know, I'll be able to win this. But anyway, well done. Congratulations. Anyone else want to have a go, or am I just going to play? I'm going to play a blitz game against a higher rated player. Thank you, Sam, as well. It was a pleasure, and again, good game. I will play... Oh, you want to play a 30-second game? What the hell? Let's play a 30-second bullet game. Alright, e4. He's playing the Scandi. I'm sure he knows the theory here, but that's okay. I'm going to start getting some threats against this queen already. And let's put some more pressure on the queen. Okay, there's a check. I better save my knight. Ooh, that's not good. This is not good at all. I'm only down to 15 seconds. What am I doing? Alright, let's just pre-move something. Queen. Oh, why didn't I take the queen? Man, this hyper bullet stuff. Is it my turn? Oh, it's my turn. Okay, I'll take. Move. Come here. Take. Huh, what am I doing? Giving my queen up twice in a row. Oh, I could have checkmated you. What was I doing? It was checkmate. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Good game. This was... That was absolutely ridiculous. 30-second game. Yeah, that was like my brain just couldn't handle. The queen sack though, how about that? That was a nice move. I didn't follow it up correctly. The idea is if you take, I should have used the other rook to provide checkmate. But as happened, I just gave you a secondary rook. And then, thankfully, you walked into a mate, which I didn't see until I played it, by the way, of course. 20 minutes of analysis on this game. That'd be the day. Alright. Look, I think that's probably going to do it for today. I've been at it for a little while. I don't know if I have enough time to play another proper game. So thank you very much for coming and hanging out. I will be at it again same time tomorrow. So if you subtract, 2.5 hours from wherever you are right now, that's basically when I start the stream, 2.5 to 3 hours before now. But tomorrow is when I'll be back. You're welcome, Sam. Very welcome. In general, I'm going to keep on trying to play sort of for improvement, which means I think trying to play slow, trying to understand the positions. And I do think that doing that over a long period of time, a year or two, is going to result in better instincts with chess and ultimately better blitz. If you wanted to play better bullet, better bullet. So that's basically my goal. What's this? TwitchCon EU. We include Australia in EU by Eurovision rules. Oh yeah, it's weird like that. Hannah Sace is there. Not sure who that is. But yeah, cool. TwitchCon EU. Is that, I take it that's going to be in Europe if you're talking about in real life chess. But yeah, very cool. I'm going to try and improve too. Keep coming back. It'd be cool to study together, or to practice things together. If you have games that you play that you find something went wrong, you don't quite understand it, let's analyze it together. I just want to really try and deepen the understanding of chess a bit. I've got some good resources. If you haven't heard, by the way, one of my acquaintances, by pure chance, by pure luck, is a fellow by the name of Grandmaster Anton Smirnov, who is the #1 rated player in Australia. And from time to time, he's going to come and sit here next to me, and he's going to play with us and teach us. So stay tuned for that, because the guy's a literal genius. And, it's not every day you get a chance to sort of hang out and play chess with literally the best player in the land. I'm talking the land of Australia. He's not better than Magnus Carlsen. He did have a game against Magnus Carlsen, and he had Magnus on the back foot for a while, but Magnus did what Magnus does and ended up winning. Long story short, though, do come back sometime and look out for the days when Anton Smirnov is going to be here with us as well. In the meantime, have a great evening, sleep well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks again. Bye.